Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help mental health professionals grow their dream practices and live a life they love. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building tips. We invite you to take advantage of our private practice paperwork and our signature marketing e-course. And we have a gift for you. This is the exact methodology we use to create our six-figure private pay practices and have helped many other therapists do the same. Go to privatepracticestartup.com and on the homepage, click the button to download a free copy of your dream private practice playbook. Now on to today's episode.
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Private Practice Startup Podcast. We are delighted that you're here. And would you guys like to know how rejection, that word just makes everyone shudder, right? How rejection can reveal your hidden superpowers. What a great topic for today's podcast. I know I'm excited about this podcast and this topic and ready to dive in, but we can't do that just yet. We have a few things to cover before we dive into this very interesting topic and see really where it goes. We hope that you guys joined us last week as actually myself, Kate, and our coach, Susan, just kind of had a roundtable discussion on how to get private paid clients in private practice. That's like one of the number one things that clinicians are always asking. And we just chatted a little bit about what we've done and how we've gotten to where we've gotten to and how we help other therapists to do the same. So definitely check out that episode. And today we actually have Natalie Higgins on our podcast. Natalie's a licensed clinical mental health counselor supervisor, a licensed clinical addiction specialist, and a certified clinical supervisor. She owns a group practice in Asheville, North Carolina, specializing in trauma, attachment, and addiction, and providing supervision to provisionally licensed counselors. Additionally, Natalie co-owns a coaching business with her spouse, where they help various entrepreneurs with mindset blocks, leadership challenges, and marketing strategies. In her spare time, you can find her spending time with her family or cuddled up on the couch with a good book and a cup of tea. And so, Startup Nation, we want to give a warm welcome to Natalie. How are you, Natalie?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, we are delighted to have you, and I'm excited about today's podcast. And we also have another special guest who is our co-host, Susan, who is our coach. So you guys are going to be hearing her more on the podcast.
Hey guys.
She is hosting with me as well today.
Great to be here and glad to have you on, Natalie.
Thanks so much.
So before we dive into this great topic, let's just take a quick moment for our sponsor.
Is managing your practice stressing you out? Try Therapy Notes. It makes billing, notes, scheduling, and telehealth a whole lot easier. Check it out, and you will quickly see why it's rated the highest EHR on Trustpilot with over 1,000 verified customer reviews and an average customer rating of 4.9 or 5 stars. You'll notice the difference from the first day you sign up for the trial. They offer live phone support 7 days a week. So when you have questions, you can quickly reach someone who can help. You are never wasting time looking for answers. If you're coming from another EHR, they make the transition really easy. Therapy Notes will import your client's demographic data free of charge during your trial so you can get going right away. Use the promo code PPS to get your first 2 months for free, or try out Therapy Notes for free, no strings attached, including their very reliable telehealth platform. Make 2021 the best year yet with Therapy Notes. As a therapist, you're probably too preoccupied with your caseload to think about bookkeeping or tax filing. Herd is a bookkeeping and tax platform built specifically for therapists that helps you track and improve your practice's financial health. Regardless of whether you're a seasoned clinician or in the first year of your practice, Herd will help you identify areas for growth and streamline best financial practices for your business. When you sign up, you'll work directly with financial specialists to track your income and expenses, file taxes online, and grow your business. You'll also receive financial insights such as profit and loss statements and personalized monthly reports. Say goodbye to reviewing spreadsheets and guessing your tax deductions or quarterly payments. Focus on your clients, and Herd will take care of the rest. Dr. Katia, a psychologist based in San Francisco, says, "Working with Herd freed up my time to focus on what really matters in my practice. Managing my books is now easy, transparent, and cost-effective. Plans begin at $75 per month and can easily be tailored to fit your business's financial needs. Schedule your first consultation at joinherd.com. That's joinherd.com.
Natalie, I always love to start with your story. So just kind of how did you end up in the therapy world? Where did that all begin?
It was a long journey and one that I feel like I resisted for a long time. I started out as a biology major in college, and turns out I wasn't very good at biology. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and no, it just wasn't for me. And so I had actually taken an elective psychology course and fell in love with it. And I was like, I think I can do this, without knowing that I was going to have to continue school for a very long time in order to fulfill the career that I have now. But it wasn't one that I ever saw myself doing. I didn't even know what a therapist was when I was in even high school, college. I didn't know until pretty much grad school when I signed up.
Really?
Yes, I didn't. I was just like, okay, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. What can I do with this? And somebody said something about going back to school for counseling. And I had like a full-time job at the time. And I was really nervous about like leaving the comfort of the job that I had and like moving into something else. And so I was like, oh yeah, counseling degree. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And then got in there and was like, oh, wow. First assignment was, hey, you need to go see a therapist. And I thought, what? Like, what do I need to do? And so from that moment, I knew that it was exactly where I was supposed to be, because it was the turning point for my own healing.
Ooh, talk about that. That's the juicy part we want to know about. From going from not even knowing what a therapist was to being told that you had to go see a therapist. So what was that experience like for you?
It was nerve-wracking. Honestly, it was, especially like in the intake, where they start asking you questions about like your family and like, your social life and things like that. And that's kind of where I think when I was thinking about the topic for like my podcast today about rejection, it was a theme in my life. And it just started from such a young age where it was, she talks excessively, or she has, a smart mouth. All of those things started kind of coming up in therapy. And I realized that I was harshly punished growing up. Parents, teachers, all of that stuff for just being very outgoing and like vocal about things, asking a lot of questions. And I just kind of learned to like stay quiet. And so there was like a moment there where I realized in my own therapy that I had really dulled my light, and allowed other people to kind of outshine me and just kind of stay in the shadows and watch, because that's where I felt safe.
Wow. So how very interesting, like you were led into this direction, but it's almost like it was for you initially. Very cool. Very cool. So tell us a little bit more about your journey then through grad school after that experience, and how long did you actually stay in therapy?
Well, I'm still in therapy. And all of my clients, I tell them, I'm like, therapists should go to therapy. And I've been in and out of it pretty much from that moment, currently still in it. I have a fabulous therapist. Shout out to her. She knows who she is. I kind of, when I was in grad school, so I was continuing in therapy, things were, I was really good at school and I really enjoyed it, and I just kept going. And then it was interesting because I landed my first job. It took me almost a year to find a job out of grad school. I kept applying for different jobs, but I was avoiding a specific one, and it was the addiction route. I have a family history of addiction, and it was a very sensitive subject for me. And I don't know that I had any clarity around addiction as a disease. I think I was just so hurt by it that I really struggled. And of course, that was the only job that I could get. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to take it and see what happens. And it turns out that my experience growing up around others with addiction really helped me understand and work really well with people that were struggling with addiction. And it kind of became a building block for my career. I've worked in and out of like opioid treatment programs, and it was one of my favorite jobs that I had throughout this process. But of course, like you said about the rejection piece, was whenever I was in a position, and this was like community mental health, I was in community health for probably about 10 years, I guess. And I would always be given these leadership opportunities, but never with the pay or with the title, right? It was kind of like, oh, you're so good at this, but you're not good enough to promote, or you're too young, but I'll let you work with the intern and you can teach her everything you know, right? So there were times that I even applied for jobs that deep down I really felt unqualified for, but I wanted to just try anyways because I had people all around me that I was working with that were saying, oh, you should do that. You're doing that anyway. And every time it was the same answer. No, 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 no. And the beautiful part about that, though, is when I would sit in the rejection and it felt horrible, I realized that because I was rejected at that first job that I had, that I wanted the supervisor position, it fueled me to get a job in Asheville. So I moved states, and I met incredible people that then helped me kind of go into the private practice world. And this beautiful soul that I feel like, I know you know her, Katie. Her name's Cindy Norton. Shout out to her.
Aw, Cindy.
I know. I trained her at RHA when she first started. And I remember her asking me, probably a couple months into knowing me, she's like, "You ever thought about private practice?" And I laughed at her. I was like, "Me? Private practice by myself? Like owning my own business? I don't know if I could do that." And she was like, "I think you really could." And I was so stuck in this, I want to be a supervisor, that instead of going into private practice, I actually took a job as a clinical director. The boss that I had, it was rough. I really felt belittled. It was just not a great place to work. Then I kept feeling like maybe I shouldn't have done this. I got a horrible review, basically, that, told me that I was like bringing down the team and that I was negative, which is something I've never been told my entire life. But I feel like at that moment, that part of rejection was, I don't need to be here. Like, I can leave, right? And so I kind of handed in my resignation and was like, I'm going into private practice. And that boss looked at me and she said, "No one's ever successful in private practice."
Ooh.
And I was like,
oh, that gave me chills, but in a bad way.
You should never have said that to me, because that just gave me even more fuel. So it felt like, again, like I said, like the rejection really feels like a superpower, because the minute I get rejected, I've learned to just pause, right? And take it all in and say, okay, maybe this situation isn't for me, but something else is. It doesn't mean that, okay, I didn't get this supervisor or this leadership position. Doesn't mean I can't be a leader. I own a group practice now. So it's one of those things where we've got, 5 therapists, and we have a doctor of Chinese medicine and acupuncturist that work in our practice. Yeah.
So I love that you share throughout your story all these little places. Well, not little, because I'm sure that they were very big and hurtful and painful and, of rejection, but it each kind of propelled you to the next level. What were some of the lessons that you learned in that? And what did you learn about, like, really yourself?
Let's see. I think it was the biggest lesson I think that I've learned so far is to just not let what other people say stop me from achieving what's out there for me. And that what's out there for me isn't for someone else. It's already there for me. And so just kind of like just grabbing it and running with it, right? And knowing that I'm going to be rejected over and over again until the end, right? But that I'm never going to keep moving forward if I don't face the rejection, I think is kind of what led me here and kind of just kept me going.
Wow. Let's just take a quick pause and just take a moment for our sponsor before we move on forward.
As a therapist, how you communicate with your clients online is just as important as how you communicate in your sessions. However, if you use email and web forms to communicate, you need to be sure that they're secure and HIPAA compliant. Hushmail takes the guesswork out of secure communications by providing encrypted email, web forms, and e-signatures all in one package. Hush Secure Forms makes building forms very easy. You can start a form from a template and customize it to reflect your practice, or use the drag and drop form builder to build beautiful forms from scratch with fields for legally binding e-signatures. Then add your form to your website or send it through secure email. Hush Secure Forms also includes a selection of screening forms such as the PHQ-9 and GAD-7 that deliver a score upon completion. Move your intake, informed consent, health history, and other practice forms to a HIPAA-compliant Hush Secure Forms platform. Your clients will spend less time in the waiting room and more time getting the care they need. Go to tryhushmail.com/PPS and enjoy your first month for free.
I'm really loving this conversation because I think rejection is one of the things, I mean, it is a thing that we all deal with, and it can be sometimes devastatingly hard, right? I'm curious for you, when you look back before you even knew what a therapist was, and then you had to go to therapy, what insights did you begin to have, like, about your life, and how have they become your superpower now?
I think one of the things that I learned a lot was about my family, right? And that the things that I had experienced growing up and the way that my family operated wasn't what everyone else was experiencing, right? Because when we grow up in our family unit, and my family is pretty, they're pretty tight. It's a tight family. Doesn't mean it's always healthy, but we were a tight family. And so I think my biggest thing was going to college and getting away. And my mom was always like, you got to go. And no one else in my family had really went to college. I'm pretty sure I'm the only person in my family to hold a master's degree and probably a bachelor's degree. And so my mom wanted more for me. She said, I want you to go. And it's just going to school. And then I went 4.5 hours away. And so I got the opportunity to see life differently from, this little place that I grew up into something that was so much bigger, and realizing that the life that I thought that I had known is not the life that everyone else lives. And that we're all so different. And it's such a beautiful thing to be around people that are different. And that kind of helped me feel like it was okay for me to be different, right? And for me to really embrace who I am. That loud, I can be really obnoxious. I swear a lot. I think I told Katie before, I'm like, okay, so I need to tone down the potty mouth, right? Because my clients, coaching and therapy clients, will tell you that I tend to just kind of say it like it is. And I think that's the thing, is when I'm doing the work with clients and coaching and myself in my own personal therapy, I'm able to just be exactly who I am and not care, and still love myself even when I make mistakes.
What was the hardest part of being able to accept yourself like that with going through so much rejection?
The hardest part, all of it, right? I feel like I want to switch to the easiest part. Let me go with that. The easiest part, honestly, was just me realizing that when I could be myself, that I was bringing in the connections with people who actually knew who I was. I think I got the hardest part. See, got to start with the easy and work towards the hard. The hardest part was having relationships and friendships with people who really didn't know me. And then when I had to I showed up as myself, and they didn't like it because that's not who they thought they were, becoming friends with, or it's not who they thought they had a relationship with. They thought that, I was more of the people pleaser and the giver, and I still can be, but I do it more from a place of I want to do it instead of feeling like I have to do it to get people to like me. So I think that was the hardest part, was losing a lot of relationships when those people realized that I wasn't pretty much who I said I was.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What was one of the most painful relationships you lost?
I have a lot, actually. I can think of, several that I had in college. And one of them, yeah. That was a touchy one. Thanks for bringing that one up. I feel like it was probably one that I had in college where I was people pleasing, and had gotten frustrated with someone who was just kind of doing things that were a little reckless sometimes. And instead of me always trying to jump in and like save them or keep them from it, I remember just like being like, okay, this is what you want to do. I'm going to walk out and just let you do your thing. And I did that. And apparently some things happened, and then I got blamed for it. And it took me a long time to work through the fact that that wasn't my fault. Like, I had done everything that I thought I could do for this person, and I'm not responsible for their behavior. But I learned that, as a kid, that I could figure out a way to keep people safe, and I could figure out a way to make things right. And that was my first moment where I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore.
Wow. So go ahead, Susan.
No, I was just going to say, I think you also mentioned maybe earlier about self-compassion. And it sounds like just over the years, developing more self-compassion for yourself and, rejecting others really means opening up to yourself and giving more to yourself and being more authentic to you. And those people that are in alignment with you you're like a magnet for those people now. And that's just so incredible to hear your story.
Thank you so much.
Natalie, for you, how, as you kind of like look through your lifespan and these areas of rejection, you talk about how they've become your superpower. How have they helped you as a therapist and business owner?
Well, they've helped me continue to get up and show up every day, right? And knowing that something like that may still happen, right? That, again, every time I thought I was being rejected, I was only being redirected to something greater. And so, again,
I love that. It's powerful. Oh, I love that.
My ability to handle rejection became my superpower, right? Because I realized that like I think I mentioned, like, getting rejected from a relationship or something like that doesn't mean that I can't have more relationships. It just means that I have to kind of go in, right? Recognize my humanness, and just kind of be aware of the thoughts and feelings that kind of go through, right? And just let them be. I think that's really my best way to really handle it and just get back out there. Like, I feel like we're never going to make it big if we play small.
True. And kind of Susan was hitting on self-compassion, and how have as you learned about like kind of your family of origin and the rejection and the stuff that you've been through, was there just kind of like this automatic self-compassion for yourself, or was this a muscle that you had to really exercise? You're like laughing at me. You're like, yeah, okay. Oh, it just came so easy.
Nothing to me has come very easily. It was definitely a muscle, and one that I had to constantly continue to try to just strengthen over time. My inner critic, and still sometimes to this day, can start. And I don't want to swear on your podcast, but I call it the little SOB is what I call it. And it's in my back of my head, and it's like, no, and it's always got something to say. And so, I learned that I feel like a lot of my self-compassion comes, like the kindness that I bring to myself, and just knowing that I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not perfect, right? Like, I'm just going to show up authentically and be myself. But I think I mentioned too, the connection piece. Like, there's so much in those connections that I have in those relationships now where I am authentic, that gives me the ability to be kind to myself, because they're rooting for me, right? We're in it together, and rooting for each other. And so, like, having that little, what I feel like is like a little team, really helps me increase that self-compassion. So there was a lot of like building up, right, for that. And really like finding other people who have had similar experiences to me always helps. So I don't feel like I'm alone, because it can feel isolating, and when we're rejected, we don't always want to call up someone and say, hey, I just got punched in the face by this. Would you like to help me? Because sometimes it's embarrassing. So, right.
Yeah. Well, embarrassing, shame, guilt, all of that stuff. And that just comes right up. And we know we need those safe people to talk about I call it the shame spiral, right? Like when you go into that shame place and you're just like, woo, I know for me, I get like super like fuzzy and confused and like sweaty. And yeah, you don't want to share that with anybody. You know what I mean? Especially if you feel like you've like done something, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Gotcha. So what's most important for our audience members to take away from your message today?
I think the biggest thing is, like we just have to keep showing up, right? And keep trying. Because like I said, what's out there for us is just waiting. It's not meant for anyone else. It's meant for us. And facing that rejection over and over just kind of opens up your awareness to other things that might be better for you. Rejection just means you're trying.
Nice. I love it. And I love, as I've listened to your story, it's this just, to me, almost like this beautiful string of events that's led you to, like you said, like the bigger and better, what's greater for you. And you just say it in this eloquent way, like how it was like divinely like created for you. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, God, I wish I saw everything in my life as that. I was listening to like Oprah. I don't know who she was interviewing, but like someone had mentioned, or no, she was talking about that, about how if we saw everything in our life, really not as a spiritual experience, but like it's just everything is something bigger and better. And I've believed that, I've thought that, but it's really hard to grasp, right? Especially when you're in the shitstorm, whether it's rejection or grief or whatever, you know what I mean? It's hard, but I just love to hear your story because you just linked those all together so beautifully.
Thank you so much. It didn't feel that beautiful, right? Like
I'm sure.
When I look back, it looks beautiful, but when I was in the thick of it, it felt like a shit show.
Oh, yeah. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for being here with us today. I love listening to your story and you sharing and really kind of coming out of your shell. And, when we met just a few short weeks ago, a month ago, I guess now. Now, can I share this on the podcast? Sure. So Natalie shared that she wanted to be seen more and that she has never done a podcast. So this is her very first podcast. And we are completely honored that she would choose us to share that experience with. And girl, you just got to be seen because I love this story that you're sharing and people need to hear it.
And so many people can relate to it. I think all therapists, are just empaths by nature. And just hearing your story today was so inspiring. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you guys for having me. It was awesome.
Oh, you were awesome. So thank you so much. And I know that you have a giveaway for our audience and you have the downloadable free checklist of 6 things you can do every day to move your business forward. And where can folks get that?
They can get that at visionostics.com.
Awesome. So it's right there on the front page. So you guys can grab that. So I would definitely encourage you to, check that out, reach out to Natalie. And we hope that you guys join us next time as we're going to be talking about navigating shared trauma in private practice. So probably something we've all experienced. Maybe we haven't realized we have, but this will be a great topic to explore that. So Startup Nation, we hope that you guys join us next week for that podcast. And don't forget, we have like over 270 now, I believe, podcasts on almost every topic regarding private practice and all the little nitty gritty and the other stuff that goes with private practice, like this podcast and our podcast next week. So check that out at privatepracticestartup.com. And you can head over to the podcast tab. We have podcasts by episodes. So that means you can just check out what the newest episode is, or you can check out our quick reference guide where we have podcasts listed by topic. So if you're having money mindset blocks, we have podcasts on that. If you have questions about insurance, we have podcasts on that. You'll just be able to easily find what you're looking for through the topic. So I just wanted to take a quick moment for our Startup Nation Superhero shout out of the day. And this comes from Katie Little, who's one of our brand ambassadors. And Katie says, I would have been lost without Kate and Katie when starting my own practice. I listened to podcast after podcast. And every time I started to feel fearful or insecure, I would go back to the podcast and either find a solution to the issue I was facing or the confidence I needed to keep pushing. I listen in between sessions, on my drive to work, on my drive home, while cooking dinner, there whenever and wherever I could. I highly recommend the podcast, the website, and the Facebook group. It makes private practice much less scary. Thank you, Kate and Katie. Well, thank you, Katie Little. That is a great story. I know my favorite place is probably a little too TMI, but listening to videos and podcasts in the shower and while I'm getting ready. It's just that really uninterrupted time. So Startup Nation, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.